In today's video, we delve into the shocking and deeply disturbing case of a killer postman who committed an unthinkable act, then lived for days with the headless body of his lover before the horrifying truth was discovered. This is Phoenix Spencer Horn. She was 21 years old, smart, nice, and loved as she should be. Until then, this is Ewan Methvin. He was 27 years old, intense, quiet, and had an evil inside that no one saw coming. This young pair lived together in a small flat that looked normal to anyone who passed by in a quiet town in Scotland, not far from Glasgow. From what I saw on social media, they looked happy. In many of their videos, they were talking, eating, and planning their future together. Behind closed doors, though, something much worse was going on. What started out as a loving relationship turned into one that was risky, controlling, and suffocating over time. Phoenix Spencer Horn was always there for her boyfriend and love, and forgave him. She hoped that he would change in time, but the truth is that she didn't realize how dangerous and broken he really was. To be honest, you can't really blame her. People may have thought Ewan was a little weird and awkward, but no one thought he would be able to kill someone, let alone his partner. Then, on a cold November night in 2024, he did something that no one could ever imagine. What Ewan did to her body and to himself in the hours after she was killed is what makes this case unique. And, well, let's just say that it will horrify you completely. Before we jump into the full story, don't forget to like the video, subscribe for more true crime content, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a new case. Also, drop a comment below and tell me which country you're watching from. It's always incredible to see how far these stories travel. Now, let's get into it. East Kilbride was Scotland's first official new town. It was built in 1947 to help make Glasgow less crowded after the war. It was built as a carefully planned community with green suburbs, roundabouts, and well-organized shopping centers. It was a model of modern life meant to make the future better and brighter. As they said, that idea is still true for many, and East Kilbride, which is home to more than 75,000 people, is still a family-friendly place. But it has its dark sides, like many places that were built on ideals. As a side note, did you know that East Kilbride became famous across the country in 2005 when police found Vicky Hamilton's body hidden in a back garden? Peter Tobin, a man who was later identified as one of the UK's most frequent serial killers, killed her. So let me know if you want to hear more about this type of classic true crime story. Vicky Hamilton's case made people in the town feel less safe. In the decades that followed, there was a slow but steady rise in domestic and drug-related violence in East Kilbride. This is a trend that can be seen in many post-industrial places across the country. Moving on, this is where Phoenix Spencer Horn, 21, and her partner Ewan Methvin, 27, lived. They were living on the quiet residential street called Glenlee. Phoenix was born in 2003. She was the fourth child and the youngest. The small town of Strathaven in South Lanarkshire, Scotland, was home to her family. Their family was close, loving, and stable, and her parents made sure that all of their children did well in school. When it comes to her parents, Allison and Graham taught their kids strong values. Because she stood out as a child, Phoenix seemed to care about all of them. Not only did she look beautiful, but her spirit did too. She was bright, friendly, and quietly compassionate. She was the type of person who would always step in to help someone when they were having a hard time. In school at Straven Academy, she was known for the same things that made her who she was at home. She was nice, funny, and had a great ability to understand how other people felt. People who taught her remembered her as someone who worked hard and made others feel like they were seen. Phoenix threw herself into work and adult life as soon as she graduated from high school. She worked at the nearby Straven Hotel in a cafe, where she served delicious drinks. Plus, I have to talk about coffee. It looked like she did it without any trouble at all. Her co-workers and bosses all looked up to her, and her customers, well, let's just say they loved her. Phoenix's life was sweet and easy when he wasn't working. She put her family first, loved music and long walks in the country, and did a lot of what most 20-somethings do these days. She shared a lot of videos to TikTok. It had a lot of happy videos of her having ice cream with friends, taking selfies during golden hour, and acting silly with her brothers. At this point, she was juggling her jobs, loving her freedom, and making plans for the future. This is when she met Ewan Methvin, who would later become her boyfriend. At first, he did seem quiet and gentle. He was the type of person who didn't say much in public, but was more thoughtful and gentle when they were alone. For those of you in the US and Australia, that sounds like a normal British man, but even by our standards, he was quiet. Ewan Methvin was 27 years old when this story takes place. He grew up in Strathaven, which is not far from East Kilbride. He lived there with his family and went to schools there. As he grew up, he got a job as a postman for Royal Mail. It was a quiet, reliable job that he did well at, according to many reports. People who knew Ewan on a casual level thought he was friendly and well-liked, but a little shy. But he also had another side that not many people saw. Several neighbors remembered that he could be angry at times and that his eyes would look dead when he wasn't feeling well. Even more so for people who had looked at his social media pages before, the signs were clear. Between the ages of 14 and 18, he wrote a lot of disturbing messages online. The tone of these messages was violent, angry, and deeply sexist towards women. He said in one post, "You've always got that one person you choke to smash out of." In another, he said, "It's kill or be killed." In one of the scarier posts, he said he wanted to kick her big, horrible teeth oot, which is northern spoken as punch her. There were dozens of texts just like this, not just a few. To make things even worse, Ewan said that he was a neighborhood drug dealer and sometimes a porn star. In fact, he would brag about how angry made him feel tense and tingly. People who saw the posts did not forget about them, even though they were finally taken down and scrubbed from the internet. Ewan's online persona showed a kid who seemed to be driven by violence and pride. No one could ignore the warning signs, even if they thought it was just a phase. After a few years, Ewan was now quietly working at Royal Mail. His co-workers said he always kept to himself, did his rounds without complaining, and tried not to get too much attention, which is a pretty big change in the story. To a neighborhood drug dealer and sometimes porn star to a postal worker and a walking red flag full-time. In any case, he finally met Phoenix sometime in late 2022. She was only 20 years old, and he had just turned 25 when they met at a family meeting. At first glance, they looked very different from each other. The Phoenix was happy and full of light, and Ewan was just Ewan. There are times when the differences between people are what bring them together. Her friends said she was kind, funny, and very faithful. It seemed like she always knew when he needed a hug or some other kind of help. They seemed to be a good fit for each other at first glance. She was in school and working part-time, and he had a steady job, so they were a good match. I think Phoenix was a great partner because she brought life and color into his life and pushed him to try new things. He came out of his shell because of her. Ewan, on the other hand, seemed like a nice guy at first. He got along really well with her family as things went on. He is so caring and loving that her friends would even say he dotes on her. From what Phoenix said, it was clear that she loved him very much. In a few months, they are now living together in an East Kilbride flat they rent. From the outside, it looked like everything was fine. They celebrated birthdays, took pictures, and even went to see family almost every week. It was just like any other couple trying to figure out life. Behind the scenes, though, things were not quite so simple. Ewan slowly began to change over time. It didn't happen all at once. It happened slowly over time. At first, it was small things like harsh comments, bad moods, and pouting when things didn't go his way. Then she became envious of her friends, the people she talked to, her job, and even the way she dressed. Phoenix, being the caring person that she was, tried very hard to calm him down. But the truth is that those cracks kept getting bigger. His fears grew, and Ewan became more unstable over time. Phoenix never caused a fuss. She started to talk to her friends about it instead, letting them know in a quiet way that things were no longer working. By the middle of 2024, she had finally decided. She was ready to move on and didn't want Ewan around. But Ewan didn't take being turned down well and seemed to have a great reason for it. He said that he wasn't really a bad guy, but just a poor victim of cocaine, steroids, and booze, and that things would get better once he got his addictions under control. However, he would not try to change, but instead use these flaws as an excuse. Always patient, Phoenix had faith in him. Phoenix and Ewan had lived together for almost 2 years by November 2024. Ewan was still getting worse at using drugs, having unstable emotions, and wanting to be in charge. When you thought about what was going on in the background, it all made sense. Ewan felt stuck in his boring job and in loops of dependence. Phoenix should never have put up with this, that's for sure. The sad thing is that her kindness and sensitivity were what kept her there and led her right into betrayal. It was a normal Saturday night, November 16th, 2024. Phoenix's job at the Straven Hotel was over, and she went home to be with her boyfriend. At the same time, Ewan had been by himself all afternoon and had even sent her a message to say that he was feeling lonely. Phoenix smiled back and said that they'd be together soon. In the evening, they ate food together in front of the TV. It looked like a normal, quiet night in from the outside. Two people in a long-term relationship were having dinner together and relaxing after a long week of work. Phoenix texted her mom at 9:37 p.m. to let her know that she and her dad were having dinner at home. The reply was short and casual, and it made it seem like nothing was wrong. Sadly, everything would change in just a few hours. People nearby heard loud noises and hurried footsteps just after midnight. The sounds seemed to come from above them, and the energy didn't seem right for a normal weekend evening. Just as quickly as those strange sounds started, there was quiet. I mean that there is silence from both the flat and Phoenix's phone. Over the course of the night, she wouldn't answer any texts or calls. The rest of the night went by without a hitch. The flat stayed dark, and her phone stood still. Phoenix still hadn't responded to her mother by the next morning, which is when Allison began to look more closely. To find out if her daughter was okay, she sent her a message. She did eventually get a message back, but it was short and not like her at all. It just said, "Sorry, I just woke up." Ewan had also sent Allison messages saying that he and she were both drunk that night and that her daughter was still asleep, which again made her nervous because it wasn't like her at all. They were worried about her, but they thought she might just need some time to get over her hangover. We didn't look into it much more during the rest of the day, but when she didn't show up for work the next day, on Monday, November 18th, her family became very worried. As expected, they called the police to look into it. Police arrived at the flat at 12:10 p.m., just after noon. Even though they were mostly interested in finding Phoenix, Ewan replied. As usual, he seemed calm, collected, and eerily quiet. The police were allowed inside, and when they did, they saw something horrible. The hallway smelt like copper, and police officers saw right away that there was a naked body lying in the room with a tea towel over part of it. They could tell right away that Phoenix had been severely mutilated because her head had been cut off and was standing up next to her body under her left arm. By looking around the land, it was clear that Ewan had tried to cut her up. 2 bloody knives were found next to her body, and a third, also stained knife was found in the bedroom. The police said the scene was so brutal, personal, and unreservedly aggressive. What's even stranger is that Ewan stayed calm the whole time. It was surprising that he answered all of their questions honestly and without any pushback. Because he couldn't stay in the flat with a full body, he told them straight out that he tried to cut her up when they asked him why he did it. All the detectives were terrified by this chilling flatness that was said without any fear or regret. The worst thing was that Ewan didn't seem to care. He even told a cop, "I guess this is what my next 25 years will look like." It wasn't a surprise that our mailman was quickly caught and taken straight to jail, with express delivery included. The next step was pretty easy. Crime scene officers put up a fence around the scene and started making notes about every part of the flat. They looked at where the knives were, where her body was, and how it was breaking down at every stage. What a sad story. Phoenix had been cut more than 20 times, and many of the times were straight in the face. The report also said that even though she had many stab wounds to the face, it was probably one to the chest that killed her. Ewan wouldn't stop yapping even after he was caught. He told the police that he had passed out while high on drugs and mentioned that steroids, cocaine, and alcohol might have all had something to do with his behavior. He never tried to avoid taking blame. He seemed focused on making himself look like a broken man who was split up by drugs and deep-seated feelings. It turned out that this wasn't the first time he had admitted to killing Phoenix. He had called 999 himself just a short time before the cops showed up at the front door. He had told the operator quietly that he had killed his girlfriend on the phone. A call center worker asked him if he was sure she was dead, and he said, "I know she is dead, mate." She is dead. I even tried to dismember her." What really happened that terrible night? From what he said and the forensic proof that was available, Ewan suddenly attacked Phoenix just after midnight and made no noise. It looks like none of this was happening for a reason. He just wanted to kill her. Someone jumped on top of her and choked her. Then they stabbed her more than 20 times. At 12:13 a.m., a neighbor who was downstairs said they heard a big bang and then several footsteps coming from above. It was too late by that time. Phoenix was no longer there. What happened next was almost too unbelievable to believe. Now that he was alone in the apartment, Ewan put her body in the bathtub, got 3 knives from the kitchen, and then, the most horrifying thing of all, cut off her head. By morning, they could no longer recognize the place they had once called home. After that, there was only the sound of Ewan pacing the flat to break the silence. Not a single person screamed for help, called 911, or said they were sorry. At this point, it was just a creepy room with a killer who was left to do what he had done. When her family started to worry, Ewan texted her mother as if nothing was wrong while pretending to be her. A few meters away, her dead body lay on the floor, unable to do anything. Ewan's behavior got even worse over the course of that Sunday, which is strange because you'd think it would stop at murder. But really, it got a lot worse because between 8 a.m., between 7 p.m., and midnight, he watched adult videos on her phone. That's right, I said it more than 170 times, not just once or twice. He watched hundreds of these videos over the next 10 hours while his girlfriend's body lay on the floor next to him. I mean, I really don't think you could be more disgusting. Crossovers like that, at that level of energy, are really scary. He would even order drugs to his flat later that day, when he was halfway through this binge. He would then keep going with it. Later, he was caught on camera driving Phoenix's red Vauxhall Corsa around town. At least once, he was seen leaving the flat. This meant that he probably went to find a local drug dealer and look for ways to get rid of the proof. In any case, it was clear that he was planning his actions to get over her death while also trying to get high all at once. At the same time, worry was building quickly in the family. People who worked at Straven Hotel called Phoenix's parents when she didn't show up for work the next day. That's when they finally had enough. Allison called the cops because she was already suspicious of what was going on. This call and Ewan's own call to the cops to confess would put an end to this terrible mystery. Up until that point, it was clear that Ewan had done everything he could to avoid being caught, from fake text messages to watching hours of pornography to crude attempts to make her body move more easily. He finally called 999 when he realized he could no longer avoid what was going to happen. When Ewan was arrested, it was the start of a long and very disturbing probe. Even though he admitted to the crime both at the scene and on the phone with the cops, they still had to figure out what had happened. Forensic teams spent hours gathering evidence in that flat, and Phoenix's family was told that her body had been found, which was very sad. Since then, they haven't been the same. 3 days after that, Ewan went to court for the first time and was charged with murder and trying to get around the law. He didn't plead guilty or say sorry, so he was sent back to jail. This case was quickly moved to the High Court in Glasgow because of how violent it was. Over the next few months, prosecutors built their case by using autopsy reports, digital forensics, witness statements, and thorough crime scene analysis reports as proof. It had been 6 months, and on June 17, 2025, he was finally ready to go to court. There were reporters, spectators, and sad family members in the room. At the same time, Ewan stood still in the dock while the lawyers described the charges in great detail. They told the judge that Phoenix had been stabbed many times, choked, and then had her head cut off. It was also said that he watched more than 170 pornographic videos and drank and did drugs, while her naked dead body lay just meters away from him. Ewan knew that he couldn't just leave because there was so much against him. To avoid this, he admitted to both charges, but only after the prosecution was able to make their case. They said that he did what he did because he was jealous, aggressive, and had been abusing drugs for a long time. But the most interesting thing about this was how planned he was after the fact. They would say that this wasn't some kind of freak accident or crazy behavior, but rather a set of cold and scary choices. It's interesting that his defense team also wouldn't try to argue with the facts. Instead, Ewan's lawyer said that his client had a mental and emotional breakdown, which is why he didn't remember killing the man. Finally, the part that really gets to me. His own lawyer said that almost everyone would see him as, quote, the personification of evil. When your own defense lawyer says that about you, well, let's just say you know you're pretty much screwed. Even so, the court did not believe the reports of a blackout. There was different evidence, and when the last points were made, the courtroom was so quiet it felt like it was going to explode. There was violence, there was damage, and there were lies. The judge had heard them all. After Ewan's guilty plea was accepted, the last thing that had to be done was to sentence him. That day finally came on July 14th, 2025. The judge said the killing was horrible and punished Ewan for breaking the trust of someone who had thought of him as family. Ewan got a life sentence for his crimes with at least 23 years to go before he can even be considered for release. The judge pointed out that he did not call for help or the police after the murder. Instead, he did all of his bad habits in the flat for almost 48 hours. This, of course, showed a terrible lack of regret or haste. The judge had only one sentence to say: you robbed her of all dignity. Phoenix's family also spoke to the court. They played voice tapes and victim impact statements that talked about the hurt, anger, and pain that the attack caused, as well as the eerie silence that seems to have taken over their lives. It was only 21 years old when Phoenix Spencer Horn's life was taken in one of the worst ways possible. She was young and had a lot of hopes and dreams. Many people paid respect to her online and in person after she died. There is now a memorial bench in her hometown of Straven where people can leave donations for Glasgow Women's Aid in her name. People who knew her will always remember how funny she was, how loyal she was, and how warm she was. How could someone so nice and full of life live with someone so dangerous? That's probably the hardest question they still have to answer. What could be so different about these TikTok videos from real life? Another thing I'd like to say is that what we see online isn't always what's real. I know I say this a lot on this channel. In fact, a lot of people show their best 1% online, which makes it look like any other day. In a psychological sense, it's a trap that makes everyone else feel like they don't have enough. Phoenix and Ewan seemed like any other young pair on social media. They shared trips, smiled in pictures, and wrote about the little things that made them happy in their daily lives. The way they were together looked normal to other people. But as it turned out, those edited snapshots only told us a small part of the story. Ewan was having a hard time behind the scenes because he was jealous, scared, and desperately wanted to be in charge. Phoenix, she was nice and tried to keep that weight off her shoulders. That must be one of the many risks of managing your life on social media, because all the lies, jealousy, and hate are hidden behind those few pixels. Thank you for watching this chilling and disturbing case. It's terrifying to think that behind an ordinary smile, there can be such unimaginable darkness. This story shows how twisted desires can push someone beyond the limits of humanity. It's a reminder to always trust your instincts and be aware of the people around you, no matter how normal they may seem. If you found this case compelling, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more true crime documentaries. Until next time, stay safe, stay cautious, and never stop seeking the truth.